The MIM-104 Patriot missile defense systems, which have long served as a vital protective shield in Ukrainian skies, acting as a virtual safety zone against Russian air attacks, have faced their most serious and consequential threat in history, a final test. The statement from the Russian Ministry of Defense, which caused deep shock in international military circles, claimed a direct, targeted, and successful kinetic strike against one of Kyiv's most advanced air defense assets. This was not an ordinary conflict report. It was an event that could redefine the character of modern warfare and fundamentally shift the balance on the front lines. At the heart of the claim was the destruction of a Patriot battery supplied to Ukraine by its Western allies and providing critical deterrence against Russian warplanes, bombers, and high-value cruise and ballistic missiles as a result of a coordinated operation by Russian intelligence and airstrike elements. This move signifies far more than just a military loss. It was a manifestation of Russia's newly developed and deadly tactics against state-of-the-art NATO systems deep within Ukraine, a show of force and a psychological blow. The details of the operation bear the hallmarks of a hybrid, multi-layered, and highly complex military approach that goes far beyond traditional warfare. The event occurred not as a single, instantaneous strike, but as the culmination of a process involving days, perhaps weeks, of meticulous preparation, intelligence gathering, deception, and ultimately, the application of overwhelming force. The first stage was inevitably in-depth exploration and target identification. Although the Patriot system is deployed on mobile platforms, the fact that a battery becomes operational in a specific area makes it detectable by a range of electronic and visual monitoring methods. It is believed that at this stage, Russia is using unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, particularly models like the long-range Orlan and Four-Post, along with more sophisticated satellite imaging systems. However, the truly critical element was electronic intelligence, ELINT, and signal intelligence, SIGINT. The Patriot's ANMPQ-65 radar produces a strong and characteristic electromagnetic propagation during target search and tracking. Special intelligence units and mobile listening stations affiliated with Russia likely worked for weeks to precisely determine the source, type, and location of these radar emissions using triangulation. This meant understanding not only where the system was located, but also the operator's work routines, the time zones when the radar was active, and potential defense vulnerabilities. Each radar pulse was a treasure trove of information for the enemy, and Russian analysts used this data to identify vulnerable moments in the Patriot battery's defenses. After the target was precisely marked and the coordinates verified, the planning phase began. Attacking a Patriot battery directly required much more than a conventional airstrike, because the attack itself risked being intercepted by Patriot's deadly PAC-2 and PAC-3 missiles. Therefore, Russian strategists planned a complex and multi-pronged wave attack. The cornerstone of this strategy was to saturate, exhaust, and ultimately breach Ukrainian air defenses. In the hours before the attack, a series of attrition attacks were launched against other points in Ukraine's air defense network. In these attacks, relatively low-cost Iranian-made Shahed drones and older-generation cruise missiles were used. These drones and missiles aim to deplete missile stocks and create physical and psychological pressure on operators by forcing them to detect and launch high-value systems like the Patriot, rather than targeting them directly. Ukrainian air defense teams, constantly on alert, scanned radar screens and fought to neutralize the successive threats. This was a tactic similar to how a boxer wears down their opponent with punches. The ground was being prepared for the final knockout blow. When the moment of the final attack arrived, the Russian command and control center initiated a series of coordinated and simultaneous maneuvers. The first wave was again composed of deceptive elements, unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, flying at low altitude and capable of reflecting different signatures to Ukrainian radar, and possibly electronic warfare, EW aircraft used to temporarily blind or jam air defense radar were deployed. This EW suppression was vital to reduce the effectiveness of the Patriot radar, disrupt target locks, and make it difficult for operators to clearly understand the situation. After this electronic smokescreen, the real deadly combined attack began. Reports indicate that at least 3 different types of missiles were used simultaneously at this stage. At the forefront of these were the Kinzhal, Dagger, air-to-air missiles, which travel at hypersonic speeds, are highly maneuverable and are designed to evade conventional air defense systems. These missiles, carried by MiG-31K fighter-bomber aircraft, were fired from very high altitudes at very high speeds, over Mach 10, before heading toward the Patriot battery. Kinzhal's speed, which drastically shortened the time from detection to impact, left Patriot operators with a very limited window to respond. However, the Kinzhals were not the only threat. Accompanying them were the land-launched Iskander-M short-range ballistic missiles. These missiles also had the capability to evade defense systems by following a ballistic trajectory, descending and maneuvering. Simultaneously, long-range cruise missiles, such as the Kalibor or newer generation models, were approaching the target from low altitude, following complex trajectories. This triple attack combination presented the Patriot system with an unprecedented dilemma. Which threat would be prioritized? The system's fire control center had to calculate dozens of incoming objects simultaneously, determine threat priority, and direct missiles accordingly. This was a scenario that pushed the limits of human and machine capabilities. The Patriot battery, of course, didn't remain passive. The radar was operating at full capacity, and the operators were trying to meet the incoming wave by using the remaining missile stocks. PAC-3 missiles were specifically designed against high-speed targets like Kinzhal and Iskander, and likely managed to shoot down a few. However, the number and variety of incoming missiles must have exceeded the defense capacity. The most critical moment of the attack was when a tactic that could be called zombie missiles or decoy missiles was deployed. Some reports suggest that Russian forces included less advanced, perhaps modified, or even unguided older munitions in this wave of attacks, designed to directly target the Patriot's missile launchers. The purpose of these missiles was to force the Patriot system to expend more missiles and clear the way for the Kinzhal or Iskander missiles, which would deliver the main killing blow. This was a strategy like sending pawns to sacrifice in chess. While the Patriot's radar and strike elements were occupied with these decoy threats, the most advanced and fastest missiles exploited gaps in the defense to reach the final target. It is estimated that Kinzhal missiles dive directly onto the missile launchers, radar antenna, or other support vehicles in a final maneuver before the warhead explodes. These missiles, equipped with thermobaric or high-explosive fragmentation warheads, must have had a devastating impact when they hit the heart of a Patriot battery. The Alexanders also played a similar role, perhaps targeting supporting elements like command trucks or power units. The moment of impact likely resulted in a series of consecutive explosions. The missile launchers on the ground exploded violently, fueled by the solid propellant inside, sending massive fireballs and clouds of debris into the sky. The radar antenna was immediately disabled upon impact, thus eliminating both the eyes and the brain of the battery. Support vehicles, personnel, and other critical equipment also suffered from this destruction, experiencing heavy losses and a complete operational collapse on the ground. It is believed that Russia conducted damage assessment work immediately after the attack, likely using drones or satellites, and confirmed that the battery was completely destroyed. This meant not just physical destruction, but the wiping out of one of Ukraine's most advanced air defense capabilities. The technological and tactical factors behind the success of this operation hold profound clues about the course of modern warfare. First, it appears that Russia has developed effective methods against Western-made air defense systems that were once considered impenetrable. Game-changing technologies like hypersonic missiles are reducing reaction time to almost zero. Secondly, the effectiveness of the swarm or wave attack tactic was once again proven. No air defense system can withstand an unlimited number and variety of attacks indefinitely. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, the vital importance of the combined use of intelligence, electronic warfare, and kinetic strikes became clear. Russia achieved this result not just by having better missiles, but by fighting smarter. The operation was a triumph of a data collection, analysis, deception, and ultimately, a hit cycle. The effects of losing this single battery will be felt immediately on the Ukrainian front. The destroyed Patriot system has created a significant gap in air defense coverage for a specific region, particularly for high-importance urban areas or critical supply points on the front line. This gap could allow the Russian Air Force, VKS, to operate more aggressively in areas where it previously hesitated to enter due to the threat of Patriot. The use of long-range missiles launched from Sukhoi Su-34 and Su-35 aircraft could increase, significantly raising the risk to supply depots, command centers, and communication infrastructure in the rear lines of the Ukrainian army. Additionally, Russia's strategic bombing campaign, particularly attacks on energy infrastructure, may encounter less resistance. Ukraine will have to redeploy its remaining air defense systems to fill this gap, leaving other regions vulnerable and weakening the overall air defense network. The psychological impact is immense. For the Ukrainian army and civilians, the Patriot was a symbol of concrete Western support and security. The demonstration that this symbol is shootable had a serious morale-boosting effect. The international repercussions are far-reaching and profound. NATO, and especially the United States, which supplies the Patriot systems, is closely analyzing this event. This is not just a matter of helping Ukraine, but also raises questions about the effectiveness of NATO's own plans to defend its territory. The fact that Russia was able to disable a Patriot battery could mean that NATO allies on Europe's eastern flank need to review their air defense doctrines. Western defense analysts are currently examining the data. Exactly where was the Patriot's vulnerability? Did the system fail because it was overloaded, or did Russian missiles develop new capabilities to evade it? The answers to these questions will directly impact the design, tactics, and nature of future missile defense systems in the West, as well as the type of military aid to be provided to Ukraine. In addition to sending more Patriot batteries to Ukraine, the urgency of creating an even more dispersed and flexible air defense network, supported by smaller, more mobile, and cheaper air defense systems, has become even more apparent. Consequently, Russia's claim of destroying a Patriot battery in Ukraine is not just another daily event of the war, but a potential turning point. This event marks a new phase in the eternal struggle between air power and air defense. This has revealed a cycle where attacks are becoming increasingly complex, intelligent, and dominant, while defense is constantly forced to evolve to keep pace with these developments. The downing of a Patriot system is not only the loss of an invaluable military asset for Ukraine, but also a serious warning for the future course of the war. Russia has managed to breach Ukraine's vital air defense shield, demonstrating its technological and tactical adaptability. How much this gap will widen will depend on how quickly and effectively Ukraine and its Western allies adapt to this new and dangerous reality. Just as the ground war on the front lines will continue to determine the fate of the conflict, so too will these invisible missile duels in the skies, and the decisions made at a headquarters in Kyiv, a NATO meeting in Brussels, or an analysis room at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., will determine how the next major offensive and its counter-response on the Donbass line. FPV UAVs belonging to the Russian armed forces continue to hit vehicles and equipment belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces, including the AN/TPQ-50 radar system, howitzers, self-propelled guns, and a tank. On the Donetsk line, FPV UAV operators from the Russian Sparta battalion located and destroyed 2 Ukrainian armed forces UAV control centers. The besieged Ukrainian armed forces units were cut off from their supply and reconnaissance vehicles. 2 Bogdan self-propelled howitzers, a Grad MLRS, and a Paladin self-propelled howitzer belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces were destroyed by Russian FPV drone operators in the Kharkiv region. Russian Southern Group of Forces troops struck areas where personnel and military equipment of the 411th Separate Unmanned Systems Regiment of the Armed Forces of Ukraine were concentrated. The operation was carried out using Iskander-M tactical missile systems near the village of Varvarovka. Drone operators from the Russian 16th Special Forces Brigade are on duty, detecting and destroying Ukrainian forces' vehicles and personnel near the village of Yampol in the direction of Krasnolimansk. The realities of modern warfare. Footage appears to show the entire area near Pokrovsk being covered in fiber optic cables by Ukrainian forces as a result of the massive use of Russian FPV drones.